So hi, my name is Brian Van Vertlu. I work for Wolfram Research. So I work a lot with our documentation systems, both with authoring and with building that documentation. But today I'm going to talk about authoring. I'm going to save building documentation programmatically for Connor tomorrow. So make sure you go see his talks. What I'm going to cover here, I want to cover a little bit of context and background for documentation in Wolfram language and for Paclets. And then I'm hoping the meat of the time here I can spend on actually writing some documentation with you. Okay, so of course you've got some Paclet code. What do you do now? You want to tell everyone how to use it. I'm going to talk about these three different kinds of documentation pages here in a minute. So for a brief history of Paclet documentation for some of you, I'll say veterans. I was going to say old timers, but I thought that might be a little rude. For some of you veterans who've been around here making Paclets for a while, it used to be we used to have this kind of dinosaur that lived inside of Wolfram Workbench that we also called documentation tools. It's very Spartan in its presentation, and it worked, but you needed the Workbench to work alongside it to construct your documentation pages and construct the Paclet. But now we have documentation tools. We've reskinned it, we've restyled it, we've trimmed down a lot of the cruft, and we built it right into Mathematica. Not just the authoring tools, but also the build code as well. Okay, let's talk about some types of documentation pages. Probably the most important kind of documentation that you will be writing is your reference pages. They're also called symbol pages. They're called function pages. Here on the left, we have what it will look like when you're writing it. And then this is just for context, what one might look like after you've built it. What these pages do is so you've written a function, these will define how you use the function. What is its usage? It will talk about any options it has, what maybe those options default values are. Most importantly, in some cases, you will have many examples, hopefully. Definitely include examples. Tell people how to use this. A lot of people skip past reference material. In my experience, a lot of people skip past the reference material and go straight to the examples. They want to see the function in action. If you don't include examples, people won't have that. These reference pages are very heavily structured. You're intended to put certain pieces of information in certain places, and the template that we'll get to in a little bit has a place for everything and everything in its place. And if you want things to look right once they're built, then you gotta play by our rules in that one. Okay, the next type of documentation page, and if you were here for Bob's talk, and I'm assuming you were, he talked a little bit about these pages. We've got guide pages. Guide pages are kind of the parent level of reference symbol pages, right? We've got where you would write a guide page to collect symbol pages into a coherent group of functionality. Maybe you have, in this case, I'm showing here the one for importing and exporting, right? Of course, the built-in system has hundreds and hundreds of guide pages. Maybe your Paclet will have one, maybe your Paclet will have 10, maybe your Paclet will have none. It's usually a good idea to have at least one, but there's nothing technically standing in the way of having 0, if that makes sense for your Paclet. The third type of documentation page we're going to talk about are tech notes. If you've been around the Wolfram systems for a while, you might recognize these used to be called tutorials. I'm not going to really get into the details of why those were renamed, but suffice to say, these are called tech notes now. These are for the kind of narrative, bookish level descriptions of how you might be using the functions in your Paclet. You might have more in-depth multi-step examples in here. You might talk about the how or why you implemented certain things in certain ways. There are some very book type documents that are written as tech notes in the system. It's very free flowing. You're kind of given the reins, and you can write what you want. So okay, now that we're through some background, let's actually do some writing. I'm going to switch to my other screen here. So for the purposes of for this authoring here, I've written an example Paclet. It's very small. It has whole 3 symbols in it. Say hello is back for an encore, and then I've got add 2 and add 3 are 2 more functions, and I just I have them here. I have them defined. It's very simple package. Very simple package file. You'll notice here that I did include usage messages, and I'll get to this in a second. It's if you have a usage message for your symbols in your package file, it will make something that I'm going to show you here a little bit easier. So let's go ahead. We can go up here and open documentation tools from the palettes menu, and here we have it. Okay, now this documentation tools, as this is what it will look like when you've opened it for the first time and without the help of the Paclet repository submission notebook that we saw a bit before. So in this case, you see this button here says add Paclet. Documentation tools doesn't automatically find Paclets. It doesn't assume that you're going to be writing documentation for all the Paclets that you have on your system. So you have to add them manually. Once you've added, or once you have a Paclet here, you want to add. This could be an empty directory if you want, and you can write, you could write documentation without there being any code. But in this case, I'm going to use this WTC example Paclet folder that I showed you the code for before. And I get this little window that pops up that just confirms this is the Paclet's name, this is the Paclet's directory, and this is the context that it automatically found from the Paclet info file in that folder. So we click OK. And then we see it shows up there. All right, so now any documentation that we write will be placed automatically, will automatically be saved in this WTC example Paclet folder. So just a quick tour of some of the top level bits of documentation tools. We have this right here, this tab that's split up into 3 tabs. This is the F tab for function. This orange one here is the G tab for guide, and this T one is the T tab for tab for tech notes. And sensibly, the tools to build each kind of page are stored in each of their tabs there. So let's just go ahead and start with a new function page. And since I'm on my second screen, it's putting all the dialogues on the first screen there. I'm not sure how well this is showing up, but we have, new function page. It does tell you the Paclet that you're putting here. I'm not sure if that's visible, but it does say WTC example Paclet to remind you that that is the Paclet that you're using. So let's say we want.
Okay, Brian.
Oh, okay, great. Okay, great. Thank you. So we're gonna just make our function name say hello. Let's talk about this for a second. So ignore is something that you might do if you just wanted to open a blank template and you didn't want to save a file anywhere. You just wanted to just look at the template and see what it looked like. If this ignore you could leave this name, you could leave the name blank and click ignore, and then it wouldn't automatically save anything anywhere, and it would just open up a blank unfilled out template. But for now, I've typed in a function name. I'm going to click OK. And it again opened on the other screen. And you'll see it open to the bottom, and I'll talk about why in a second. But you can see that it did save it as say hello. It filled out the title. It filled out, the not only the template here with the arguments, but you'll see that it also even pulled in the usage message automatically for you. So usage messages are a good thing to have anyway, but putting them in your code before you start writing documentation saves you even this extra step, which is super handy. And you'll see up here it does tell you which Paclet you're dealing with. And then okay, let's walk through a bit of the template before we start typing anything. Before we do this, I find it's useful to have a side-by-side page to see where things will end up once they're built. So this brown box, it's pretty obvious that becomes these blue usage messages here. Everything that is in here, everything you type in here maps to these details and options. So everything that goes underneath the usage box in the authoring template goes in here. That's tables, that's text. But by convention, we don't have code in these. If you want code, the examples are the place for that. But let's close that back up. These are actually things that will go down in the footer. These are related tech notes. These are for related links. Say if you had any, if you wanted to point to, a function repository page or a data repository option or object, or maybe your GitHub repository or something, it doesn't matter. But these related links are links to things either in Mathematica or on the web that don't fit in one of these other kinds of links. C alsos are for related functions. So these are placeholders that will, one-click placeholders, so you don't have to select the X's manually. And you can say, if you wanted to link to plot, and if you want to add another one, you can just click the little plus button, and click as many times as you want, and just add more. However you want to do that. Related guides, of course, is for related guide pages. Typically, you would have at least the guide page that this function was listed on, if any, listed here, but maybe there's more than one related guide. You can list them here, separate cells. Examples initialization. This is a new thing to this version, to version 13.2. So in previous iterations of Paclet documentation authoring, you would need to have a needs, you have to have one of these needs calls or any other initialization in each example group. And the reason for that is that examples by cell group are split or are sandboxed to themselves. They're islands unto themselves. So if you, for example, use the same, if you use X in 30 different examples in your notebook, you won't have that any definitions to X polluting any other examples in your notebook. But the drawback of having these isolated examples is that you would need this needs statement, because when things aren't loaded on your context path, then all of a sudden the symbols that you're trying to use in your Paclet won't show up. Now, what I'm not sure about, and I need to test, is whether the new needs syntax that Todd was talking about would obviate the need for this. But I suppose then you would still need to fully qualify your functions, which may or may not be convenient for you. Now, the way this works once your page is built is that this needs call will show up, but any code that you put in here will also be baked into every input. So you need to make sure that whatever you put here is not computationally expensive. If you're finding the first, 500,000 prime numbers in this examples initialization, guess what? Every time you evaluate any example in your page, it's going to try and find the first 500,000 primes. So it's just be wary that the examples initialization, with great power comes great responsibility, right? And it's up to the author here to make sure that they're not putting in something crazy here that's going to completely bog down every example in the notebook. Needs calls are always very cheap, though, at least after the first call. So so this is automatically filled in based on the Paclet, or based on the context that was defined for the Paclet. And so then basic examples is basic examples. It gets its own section. Close that up. And then the rest of the examples, of course, map one-to-one, their scope, generalizations and extensions. Options is, has a sub section for each option, and that makes sense. So let's talk about metadata here for just a quick second. So metadata is, of course, the data about the page that shows where, what version it maybe was included in or modified in. And categorization is metadata that talks about what kind of page it is, what Paclet it belongs to, and its URI. If you were, once you've installed a Paclet with documentation, you can in fact find its documentation in the Help Center, but not if it doesn't have a URI assigned to it. And then you can also provide keywords. These are search keywords, because building your Paclet will also include a search index. So if you're searching for, if I searched for hello, this page may come up in the search results there. Keywords are typically one per line. And then they're typically not capitalized except for proper nouns, but those are conventions. The search system tries to do the right thing based on whatever you put in there, and it will index things exactly and also search things with stemming and other things in place. So it, as long as you get the right idea, your keywords listed here should work fine. Syntax templates, these are typically very advanced capabilities. These I was considering maybe removing these, as they might have been confusing, but I think they're useful for a built version of this page. I'm not sure if the Paclet build tools do anything with this yet, but we're hoping to have something in there eventually where you can provide, this is largely to affect the syntax coloring of your symbols. So when if you get the coloring of missing arguments, or if you have extra arguments, or even the lighter blue for localized variables and things like that. That's all defined in the syntax templates area. So right now, the Paclet tools won't do anything with that, but that's not forever. So you can fill these in, and I'm not going to go into the syntax for what goes here. That should all be findable in the documentation for these pages, which I should add is findable at the bottom of every tab via the help. The help button will open up a documentation page that links to several other workflows and has a step-by-step for every button here. Okay, so we have talked about that. So let's say, so now we want to talk about, well, let's actually write some of this. Let's actually write some of this documentation here. So what do we want to say about say hello? Well, we should probably say what is name. Let's say name must be a string. I don't know if that's true or not. I think it is. Yeah, okay. It is. So we see that, okay. So, Bob mentioned earlier about template input. It's great. It's a great thing. It helps you format everything, links things for you. We see that, but when we're talking about this, we see that name is the variable. So we say template input, and then it does pop this up. It gives the option here to, if you want to link to a symbol named name. There is no symbol named name, but documentation tools is, maybe you're writing this piece of documentation before you have written that page. So it offers to make the link for you if you want. But in this case, since it couldn't find one, it defaults to just format the link. And you hit OK, and you see that it looks and it's nice and formatted like that. And maybe say hello has some options. It doesn't, but you can see for the tools here, details and options has its own section. We can open that up and we can see some of the tools that will help you fill out this section of the documentation page. Of most note here are these tables, where you see the little graphical little visualization here of a 1-column table, a 2-column table. You see a little break there, and a 3-column table. If we click that, we get the 3-column table, and we could fill out each object here however we wanted. If we wanted to add a row, we just put the cursor in the table, click add row, and we added a row, and it will add the row after wherever you've put it. So, oops, it's supposed to be a C. whatever, that works. So we click add row, it puts the row after wherever it was selected. So if you just want one at the end, of course, you can just put it at the end. Sorting your table will sort by this, the string value of the first row, or the first column. Merging tables, if you had multiple tables that have the same number of arguments, you could select two tables, you click merge table, and it automatically merges them for you. And I want to talk about options table here. So options table, and I wish I had written my function here with an option in it. What options table does, what options table does is it will look at the code and see, are there any options for this function? And if there are, it will let you select from the list of options which options you want to show up in the table, and it will fill in the default values for you, and then it will leave a space for you to describe what the option actually is. Unfortunately, I don't have an option. I don't have a symbol here with an option. So, but that's it. You can look at the documentation for documentation tools and see that in progress, or in situ. So I'm going to briefly talk about the examples. There's not a ton here because examples are generally just captions and code. So we simply have buttons for captions and code. The text is for the caption. This is a caption. And by convention, we always end our captions with colons. That's just our convention. They used to be periods back in the old Mathematica book. They are colons now. So that's what we do. But of course, if you type without pressing any buttons, then you get code. So there is no button for insert code because you just type to get code. Delimiters are important, not just for structure, not just for visually distinguishing examples from each other, but you'll see that delimiters also group. And what that means is, if you recall me talking before about examples being isolated from each other by the cell group, a delimiter is what we use to isolate examples from each other. Okay, so links, links make links. For the sake of time, I'm just going to skip links. Formatting, there are some, sometimes you might want to have special formatting in your pages. Like literal input will make just code form without linking anything. Code inline will make computer voice without an inline cell, an italic input and things like that. This kind of makes sense. Let me close some of these up. Let's talk about Futurize for just a second. The old documentation tools had Futurize as well, but let's, so Futurize, what Futurize does is maybe you have a section of your page or you have a whole page that you don't want to actually build when you have your Paclet. Maybe it's a page for functionality that doesn't exist, or maybe it's a piece of your page that you don't want to be included in the final section. So we have, see, you have selection and whole page. I'm going to select this table. If I click selection, you see it turns this nice, totally non-alarming pink color and tells me who futurized it. That's me, Brian V, and when I did, when I futurized it, and then this cell will no longer be included in the build page. If we did whole page, then we get this banner at the top that says future. Now the whole page will be ignored when it comes to build time. The last thing I want to talk about with function pages is something under tools, and this is a nice little shortcut for when you have a number of function pages you want to make for your Paclet. Under tools is generate function pages. And if we click that, then we get on my other screen again. Then we see the Paclet name, and now we have some options. This will make, it will do the same thing that it did for new function page, where it generates the page with the usage and the metadata filled in, but it will do it for every symbol in your package. So if you wanted to build them all, you can. If you've built some of them, if you've made some of the pages yourself and only want to build the missing ones, like we have here, like I wrote the say hello page. I don't think I saved it, but I did write it. Then we could say build only missing, or if you click selected, then it pre-populates this input field with all of your functions, and you can just a comma delimited list of functions. You can add or delete whatever you want from the list. For now, I'm going to say build only missing, and then it tells you where it's going to put them and whether you want to leave the pages open when you're finished with them. So after I click OK, then over on my other screen, it made add 2 and add 3. And then you can mark these up however you want. It's a nice shortcut when you have a bunch of pages to make and don't want to have to type a bunch of different function names over and over and over again. So, okay, let's talk about guide pages quickly. Running a little short of time. I'll try and make it fast here. So we got a new guide page. Let's talk about, let's just call it, these are my functions. That was too big. So my functions, and it saved the page where it should go. Let's, for reference, go ahead and jump over here. This one's a little more straightforward since it's just a title, an abstract, and a list of functions, but it's still useful to have it open. Now you'll see on guide pages, we have a toolbar here too. The toolbar is, it's nothing here that you couldn't get from the palette, but maybe you don't want to move across the screen every time you want to use something from here. Eventually, there will also be a toolbar in the function page one, but there are just so many useful things in the function pages list. I haven't quite yet decided on the list of things that I want to put in the toolbar. And if you have to click 3 or 4 times to get through everything in the toolbar, then what's the point, right? So, but in this case, these are the most important things that you would need for a guide page. And so that was pretty much a slam dunk for what should go in the toolbar here. But anyway, we have my functions, and we can type in, this is my list of functions. And here, as Bob alluded to this a little earlier, we have what are called one-line function listings. These are for typically your more important functions that need their own, that would want their own description. So we're going to put, say, hello here. We're going to say hello to someone. But I don't think add 2 and add 3 are so important. So what I'm going to do is, what I'm going to put in is what's called an inline function listing. So it's functions inline, and you'll see that it's functions inline listing. It's the same, does the same thing. So we click that, and then we get this cell here. So we can say, I want add 2 to go here, and then I click another one, and let's say add 3. And you'll see that it's, just to delete the rest of that to get rid of noise. You'll see that each one of these doesn't get their own description. So, it's similar to here, where you've got more important functions, and then you've got the list of kind of tangentially or less important functions listed just side by side. And that's how that goes. Just like in ref pages, we have cross-linking. If you have related tech notes, if you have related guides and related links. The metadata section's a lot smaller here. We don't have to worry about syntax coloring. We don't have to worry about things like that. So we have fewer options here, but we still need to worry about search terms, and we still have to worry about URIs if you want your page to be findable via search. So let's quickly move on to tech notes. And it put on the screen. So more about my functions. Okay, so the first thing you might notice here is the color mismatch, or the other ones were nice and uniform. I don't have a good excuse for that. It needs to be fixed. I will say tutorials used to be this brownish color, and then TechNotes got redesigned into being this purple color, and so that's probably the main reason. I don't have a better reason than that. But very similarly, we got, this is the base template here. It's got a few different things, it's got a few different styles of cell filled in here just to kind of show you at a glance what's possible. But when we're talking about mapping this one-to-one, it's important to note that these set of jump links here that are in this list, this is automatically generated during the build based off of these section cells. You see importing and exporting data. If we scroll down, we'll see importing and exporting files. And so this is created by the build. There's nowhere to spell this out in the authoring notebook. You simply put your sections in the notebook as you're writing it, and these will generate there. So I'm just going to talk about inserting a few things into TechNote templates, and then we'll move on. In this toolbar, we've got a series of drop downs. So if you want to insert, you got section, subsection, text, example group, and example caption, which maps directly to these 5 buttons here. So again, nothing in the definition or nothing in the toolbar that's not available in the palette. It's just a different way of accessing it that might be easier for some people. If you don't want to use it, you're not missing a thing. But all you do is just pop it open, click a section, and then you can type the name of it. Easy, dead simple. The other thing to talk about here are definition boxes. And this is an example of a definition box. In the authoring side, this is an example of a definition box in the built side. So what a definition box is a lot of times how these tech notes are laid out is you list the functions that you're going to talk about in a definition box and generally what they do, and then you go on to talk about them. Maybe there's more than one definition box per table, or I'm sorry, per section. And you can see that this particular section has has multiple definition boxes with slightly different content in them. There's no limit to how many definition boxes you have, but oops, I accidentally clicked when I didn't mean to. In the why does it keep doing that? Okay, there we go. Under definition boxes, you have the choice of 2-column, 3-column. Now, add row and merge, of course, they're not inserting anything. But if you have more than one, if you had more than one definition box selected, you could, of course, merge them. Thank you, everybody.